It all begins with belief. Not the kind of belief that's passive, not the kind that waits around for proof or permission, but the kind that chooses to believe before any results are visible. That's the belief that moves the world forward. That's the belief that transforms ordinary people, extraordinary leaders. When we learn to believe as if anything is possible, we begin to reshape not only our future, but the very way we see ourselves. Most people live with conditions on their belief. They say things like, I'll believe in myself when I have more experience, or I'll go after that dream when I feel ready. They tie their belief to evidence, to approval, to validation. But that kind of belief doesn't lead movements, doesn't build companies, it doesn't inspire teams, or unlock innovation. Real belief, the kind that changes lives, comes first. It starts in the absence of evidence. In fact, it demands the absence of evidence, because that's what gives it power. The people who leave a mark on the world are not the ones who had all the answers or the perfect circumstances. They're the ones who believed when it didn't make sense to. They saw what could be even when no one else did, and they didn't wait for someone to tell them it was okay to believe. They gave themselves permission. We all have that power, every one of us, but somewhere along the line, taught to be realistic, we're told to keep our feet on the ground, to avoid disappointment, to play it safe. We learn to dim our expectations in the name of maturity or responsibility. But here's the truth. Believing in possibility isn't reckless. It's necessary. It's not about ignoring reality. It's about expanding it. When we believe as if anything is possible, we start to see opportunities we never noticed before. We begin to speak and move differently. We carry ourselves with a quiet confidence, a conviction that draws people in. People follow those who believe in something bigger, not just because of the belief self, but because belief gives others permission to believe too. We don't need to know how everything will work out. We just need to start with why. Why does this matter? Why is this dream, this vision, this goal worth believing in? When we anchor our belief in purpose, we build a foundation that can weather any storm. Purpose is what keeps us going. When logic says to stop, it's what keeps us standing. When others sit down, and it's what gives our belief meaning. Not just for us, but for the people we serve, the teams we lead, and the lives we touch. There's a moment that comes for all of us, a moment when we're faced with a decision. We can believe the doubt. We can listen to the voice that says we're not ready, not smart enough, not qualified, or we can choose something different. We can choose to believe in the possibility of what could be, not because it's guaranteed, but because it's worth pursuing. That's the turning point. That choice to believe is the spark. It's the beginning of something greater. From there, everything changes, not all at once, but gradually. The way we think, the way we act, the way we show up in the world. We stop playing, not to lose, and we start playing.
Well, we stop asking if it's possible, and we start asking what's next. But let's be honest, this kind of belief isn't always easy. It's vulnerable. It's uncomfortable. It requires courage, especially when no one else sees the vision you're chasing. That's okay. Belief doesn't require a crowd. It only requires commitment. It only requires you to hold on to that vision a little longer than your fear wants you to. When you lead with belief, you invite others to raise their standards. You set a tone, you create a culture where hope isn't naive, it's disciplined. That's what belief does. It shifts environments, it transforms teams, it rewires thinking, and over time it reshapes reality itself. Think about it. Every innovation, every breakthrough, every life-changing idea began with someone who believed before they had the answer, before they had resources. Before they had the results, they started with a belief that something more was possible, and because of that belief, they made it possible. That's the kind of belief we need more of in this world, and not just in boardrooms or classrooms or on stages, but in everyday moments, in the quiet decisions, in the small risks, in the private battles. No one sees believing as if anything is possible isn't just a mindset, it's a discipline. It's a choice you make over and over again, not once, not twice, but daily. There will be moments when your belief gets tested, when the results don't come, when the setbacks feel personal, when it would be easier to retreat than to move forward. Those are the moments that matter most, not because they define you, but because they refine you. Belief is forged in the fire of resistance. The more you hold it, the stronger it becomes. So ask yourself, what would your life look like? If you believed without limits, what dream would you pursue? What idea would you share? What risk would you take? What part of yourself would you finally give permission to lead? It's not about arrogance. It's not about pretending to have all the answers. It's about trusting that if you start walking, the path will rise to meet you. That if you show up with integrity, courage, and conviction, the right people will come. The right doors will open, the right growth will happen.
It starts with belief, real, unapologetic, purpose-driven belief. And that's the part of you that no doubt is real purpose-driven belief. The kind that doesn't wait for permission, the kind that sees potential before results, the kind that leads even when it's scary. That kind of belief changes everything. Because when you learn to believe as if anything is possible, you just might prove that it is. When people talk about failure, they talk about it like it's the worst thing that can happen. But failure isn't the enemy. It never was. The true enemy is doubt. Doubt stops more dreams than failure ever could. Doubt is quiet, subtle, and convincing. It doesn't scream, it whispers, it tells you you're not good enough. It tells you you're not ready. It tells you to wait, and if you listen to it long enough, you start believing it. Failure is loud and public, sure, but at least when you fail, you know. You tried, at least you were in motion, at least you were in the arena. Doubt, on the other hand, paralyzes it, convinces you to sit on the sidelines and call it wisdom. It wraps itself in logic and realism and presents itself as protection, but what it really protects you from is growth. We often think fear of failure is what holds us back, but if we dig deeper, it's not the failure itself. It's what the failure might mean about us. It's the internal narrative that says if I try and don't succeed, I must not be enough. And that's where doubt lives, in the gap between action and identity, in the place where we confuse our outcomes with our worth. But here's something to consider. Failure gives feedback. Doubt gives excuses. Failure builds resilience. Doubt breeds regret. You can learn from a failed attempt. You can adjust, iterate, try again. Doubt gives you nothing to work with. It builds nothing. It moves nothing and inspires no one. And the saddest part is it often looks like being responsible. Think about how many people have sat on brilliant ideas because they didn't think they were the type to pull it off. How many conversations weren't started? How many goals were delayed? Not because they failed, but because they never let themselves believe they could succeed. Doubt told them they weren't ready, and they listened. The danger is that doubt doesn't feel like danger. It feels safe, comfortable, rational. It dresses up as humility. Who am I to think I can do that? But that's not humility. That's fear in disguise. Humility is saying, this scares me and I'm still going to show up. Real humility is stepping into something bigger than yourself, knowing full well you don't have all the answers, but choosing to move forward anyway. When you believe as if anything is possible, you're not denying the risks, you're not ignoring the obstacles, you're just refusing to let doubt be the author of your life. You're choosing courage over certainty, you're choosing action over paralysis. And that choice, repeated again and again, is what separates those who dream from those who do. It's easy to look at people who've achieved big things and assume they were always confident, but confidence doesn't come before belief. It comes after you believe first. You take the risk, you endure the discomfort. And on the other side of that discomfort is the confidence everyone else sees. They don't see is the fear you wrestled with at 2 a.m., the doubt you had to shut down every morning, the faith it took to keep going when there were no guarantees. It's saying, I might fall flat on my face, but at least I'll know I tried. That kind of courage is magnetic. It draws people in. It gives them permission to be bold too. People don't follow perfection. They follow honesty. They follow conviction. They follow those who say, I don't know how this ends, but I know it matters enough to begin. That's what leadership is, not control, not certainty, just belief in the face of doubt. And here's the thing, belief is a decision, not a feeling. You don't wait to feel ready. Decide to move any way you decide to believe. That you're capable, that you're resourceful, that you're becoming who you need to be. In the process, you choose to trust the process, even when the outcome isn't guaranteed. You choose to trust the process even when the outcome isn't guaranteed. Some of the most impactful journeys in life start not because someone had all the answers, but because they finally said, I'm tired of letting doubt dictate what I do. They chose to be bold, not because they felt bold, but because the alternative, playing small, was too painful to accept anymore. This shift changes everything when you start acting on belief instead of waiting for the absence of doubt. Doors start to open, maybe not all at once, maybe not the doors you expected, but motion creates clarity, progress builds momentum, and over time, you become the kind of person who doesn't just believe things possible. You create what's possible. You'll still have setbacks, you'll still face resistance, but doubt will no longer be in the driver's seat. It'll be a voice in the background, not gone, but no longer powerful, because once you realize it's not failure that should scare you, the life you'll miss by never trying something clicks. And that realization makes belief the only logical path forward. You don't need to eliminate doubt to begin. You just need to make belief louder. You need to anchor yourself in purpose, in vision, in something worth fighting for. Because when your why is strong enough, doubt becomes noise, annoying, persistent, but ignorable and in its place. Belief grows slowly at first, then all at once. That's when everything begins to shift. Not just in your circumstances, but in how you show up, how you speak, how you lead, how you live. You start walking into rooms differently. You start taking bolder actions. You stop apologizing for wanting more. You stop shrinking to make others comfortable once because you've learned the truth. It's not failure that limits you, it's doubt. And once you stop giving doubt your permission, you start living a life that looks a lot more like possibility belief. Without action is just hope dressed up as potential. There comes a point when thinking, planning, and even believing isn't enough. You have to start acting, not just as you are now, but as the person you're becoming. The shift happens when you begin to act as if what you want is already possible. That's when things start to move. That's when belief turns into behavior, and behavior changes outcomes. It's not about faking it. It's about choosing it. It's about aligning your actions with the vision of your future self before you feel completely ready, because you won't feel ready. Not really. The most meaningful journeys in life begin in the absence of full confidence. They begin with a decision to act anyway. The most successful, fulfilled people aren't necessarily the smartest, most talented, or most resourceful. They're often the ones who simply made a choice to embody the belief before there was any visible result. They spoke as if they were already capable. They led as if people were already following. They invested as if they were already worthy. That mindset created the very reality they stepped into. The idea is powerful. Not because it changes your environment instantly, but because it changes you first. And when you change, your world responds. People start to treat you differently. When you treat yourself differently, the doors don't magically swing open, but you begin to knock on them with great clarity and confidence and calm. And that alone often opens more than you expect. When you act as if you build a bridge between who you are and who you want to become, it's not about being authentic. It's about aligning your actions with your vision instead of your fear. And ironically, that's when you start to feel most like yourself, because you're no longer shrinking to fit version of you built on self-doubt. Think about it. How would you carry yourself if you already believed your success was inevitable? How would you speak in a meeting? How would you show up for your relationships? What boundaries would you set? What opportunities would you pursue? The answers to those questions are already inside you. Acting as if is how you start bringing them to life. We wait so often for permission from others, from circumstances, even from ourselves, but permission is an internal decision. No one gives it to you. You choose it. You wake up and say, going to lead. Today, I'm going to speak with conviction. Today, I'm going to create, to serve, to build as if the world needs what I have to offer, because it does. That's not arrogance, that's responsibility. You don't need a title to lead you. Don't need validation to add value. You just need to start. There's this lie we're often told that confidence comes from achievement, that once we have enough wins, we'll finally believe in ourselves. But it's the other way around. Confidence comes first. You build it through repeated choices to act. Despite the uncertainty, and the moment you do, you create momentum. Action builds belief. Every time you step forward in faith, even when you're scared, you reinforce the idea that you are capable, and that shifts everything. This is why habits matter, not because they impress anyone, but because they remind you of who you are. When you act as if anything is possible, you create a standard. You start to treat your goals like responsibilities, not fantasies. You stop making decisions based on your past and start making them based on your potential. That shift alone can change the trajectory of your entire life, of course. There will be days when doubt creeps in, when it feels silly to act as if, when the results don't come fast enough. That's okay, that's human, but the difference between those who move forward and those who stay stuck is not the absence of struggle, it's the presence of consistency. You act anyway, you stay in motion. You keep showing up with the belief that just because something hasn't happened yet doesn't mean it never will. And here's the beautiful irony: when you act as if it's already possible, it often becomes so, not because you magically bypass the hard work, but because you now have the mindset required to do that work with clarity and perseverance. You become the kind of person who doesn't just hope for transformation, you embody it. And when others see that energy, they respond to it. Opportunities come, relationships deepen, influence grows. People don't follow your credentials, they follow your conviction. They don't remember your title, they remember how you made them feel when you carry yourself with the energy of someone who believes in their mission. People listen when you show up as someone who believes in possibility. Others borrow that belief. They begin to see more in themselves because of what they see in you. And that's what it means to lead, not to be the smartest or the loudest, but to be the clearest, the most grounded, the one who shows up fully. The one who speaks with the authority that comes not from external validation, but from internal alignment. That kind of leadership doesn't need to convince, it simply is. And it starts when you act as if what you want is already within reach. And the story starts when you wake up and say to yourself, every big step in life starts with one small decision. To behave today like the future you envision is already unfolding. Maybe that means waking up earlier. Maybe it means speaking up in that meeting. Maybe it means saying no to something good to make space for something great. These choices add up. They become your path eventually. What once felt like pretending becomes your new reality, and what was once a dream becomes your new normal. You don't need to fake anything. You just need to commit. Commit to the process, commit to the vision, commit to becoming. Because belief, like trust, is built through consistent action over time. You don't find it, you create it every time. You act as if anything is possible. You prove that it is not all at once, not without setbacks, but undeniably you are not waiting for the moment to arrive. You are the moment you create the shift. You become the change, not someday, not when it feels easier, right now, by choosing to act like it already matters. Because it does, and when you start showing up like that, the world begins to reflect it. People begin to respond to who you are becoming, and slowly then suddenly the life you imagine starts becoming life. You're living, you get to set the precedent. The way you want the people around you matter more than you think, not just in terms of support or friendship, but in terms of belief. Belief is not something you carry alone. It's not just an internal force, it's a shared energy. It spreads, it echoes, it either grows or fades based on who you let speak into your life. You can believe in yourself all day long, but if you spend your time surrounded by people who constantly doubt what's possible, it gets harder to hold on to that belief. Not because you're weak, but because you're human. We're wired to belong. We're wired to mirror, whether we admit it or not. We reflect the standards of the people we're closest to. So when you're trying to build belief, real, bold, limitless belief, it's not just a mindset, it's an environment. And one of the most powerful things you can do is consciously choose to surround yourself with people who live in possibility, people who believe in growth, in courage, in progress, people who look at challenges and see opportunity, people who hear the word impossible and respond with says, who there's nothing noble about, staying loyal to environments that keep you small. And yet so many of us do. We stay in conversations filled with scarcity and fear. We surround ourselves with people who've made comfort their identity and call it love or loyalty. Truth is, if you want to grow, want to believe as if anything is possible, you have to be willing to outgrow some circles. That doesn't mean you cut people off with bitterness or arrogance. It means you recognize what feeds you and what drains you. You become intentional. You spend more time with people who make you feel expanded. Reduce people who challenge you with love, not criticism. People who make you feel like dreaming big is normal, not naive. You've probably had moments where you walked into a room and suddenly felt braver, more inspired, more alive. That wasn't coincidence. That's the power of being in the presence of people who carry belief. It's not just about what they say, it's how they live. It's the way they speak about their goals, the way they respond to failure, the way they talk about what's possible, not just for themselves, but for others. Something happens inside you when you're around that kind of energy. You stop questioning whether your vision is too big. You stop asking for permission. You start raising your own standards, not because someone told you to, but because you remembered what you're capable of. The power of contagious belief. It activates something in us. It wakes us up, and often it shows up in people who aren't even trying to inspire. They're just living in alignment. Their belief isn't loud. It's not showy. It's consistent. It's real, and that's what makes it magnetic. But here's the thing. Belief can be contagious. So can doubt. So can fear, so can limitation. Spend enough time around people who talk more about what can't be done than what can, and you'll start to internalize that narrative, even if you don't mean to. You'll find yourself shrinking your vision just to avoid being odd one out. And that's dangerous, because every time you mute your belief to stay comfortable around others, you disconnect from your own purpose. You start playing a role instead of leading a life. You start asking smaller questions, taking fewer risks, settling for less, and maybe you don't feel it right away. But slowly, the fire inside starts to fade. That's why the people around you matter, not just emotionally, but strategically. You need to be around people who remind you of who you are. When you forget, people who speak vision into you, people who don't flinch when you talk about impossible things, people who normalize bold moves and make you feel safe being fully seen. And here's the truth, not everyone will get it. Some people will misunderstand your belief. They'll think you're being unrealistic. They'll label your boldness as ego. That's okay. You don't need everyone to get it. You just need a few people who do, a few people who see your heart and say, keep going. I see what you're building, even if it's not visible yet. Those are the people worth keeping close. the ones who sharpen you, stretch you, challenge you to rise. And when you find them, whether it's in a mentor, a friend, team, or a partner, honor them, learn from them. Reflect back the same belief they give you, because belief multiplies when it's shared. And don't just look for those people. Be one of those people. Be the person who walks into a room and makes others feel like their dream is valid. Be the person who believes out loud, who encourages generously, who speaks vision when others are drowning in fear. The world doesn't need more critics. It needs more builders, more encouragers, more leaders who see beyond the current moment and live with a sense of what could be you. Never know who's watching you to see if belief is still possible. You never know who needed your courage today just to take one more step. That's the beauty of contagious belief. It doesn't require perfection. It just requires braveness. It requires being brave enough to say, I don't have all the answers, but I'm moving forward anyway. And when you live like that, you don't just change your life, you help change others. You model a different way to exist, a way built on purpose, not fear. Vision, not validation, growth, not comfort, and that impact echoes far beyond what you'll ever see. So choose your circle wisely, feed your belief intentionally, share it generously, because belief is not just something we carry for ourselves, it's something we carry for each other. And when we do that, when we surround ourselves with possibility thinkers and we become possibility thinkers, we create a ripple effect that turns bold visions into lasting change. Belief isn't something you stumble into. It's not a single moment of inspiration. It's something you build slowly, deliberately, repeatedly. That's the part people don't see. They see confidence and assume it's natural. They see someone standing tall and think they must have always been like that. But belief, real grounded, lasting belief, is a product of repetition. We don't wake up one day and say, this is a kind of courage that can be summed up in one word. They say we earn that belief through consistent choices. We speak up when it's easier to stay quiet. We show up when it's tempting to give in. We practice courage, and over time, courage becomes part of us. It's not magic. It's not luck. It's practice. And that's where most people give up, not because they lack potential, but because they expect belief to arrive before they've done the work. But belief doesn't show up fully formed. It grows with every repetition. The more you act on it, the more real it becomes. Every time you take a step forward, when it would have been easier to sit still, you reinforce the idea that you are someone who moves forward every time you choose growth over comfort. You rewrite your story not once, not occasionally, but consistently. It's like a muscle. You don't go to the gym once and expect transformation. You go again and again, not because the first time didn't matter, but because every rep builds on the last belief. Works the same way. You say the words, you do the hard thing, you lean into your purpose. And the next time it feels just a little more natural, a little more you. That's how we become the people we're meant to be, not through grand declarations, but through daily decisions. Too often, we confuse belief with hype. We think we need motivation to build belief, but belief is quieter than motivation. It's more steady. Motivation might get you started, but repetition keeps you going. Repetition is what you rely on. When the excitement fades, when the applause stops, when no one's watching, that's when belief is truly tested and strengthened. There's something powerful about showing up for yourself over and over again, even when there's no reward in sight, when there's no proof you're making progress. You still show up, you still try. That kind of consistency doesn't change what you do, it changes who you believe you are. And once that identity shifts, once you start to see yourself as someone who perseveres, who acts, who believes, then everything else starts to align. Your choices, align your standards, rise. Your vision becomes more clear. That's not because your circumstances changed, it's because your belief. Did you begin to operate from a different baseline, one that says, this isn't just what I want, it's who I am? And when your identity is rooted in belief, you no longer need to prove yourself constantly. You just live it. That's the goal. Not just to chase belief, but to embody it. But here's the catch: repetition doesn't mean perfection. You'll still miss days. You'll still have moments where doubt feels louder than vision. That's okay. Belief isn't built in the absence of failure. It's built in how you respond to it when you fall and get back up. That's belief. When you doubt and take action anyway, that's belief. When you want to give up, but decide to go one more round, that's belief. We live in a world that celebrates sudden transformation, success, the big breakthrough, but belief rarely works that way. It's not a lightning strike. It's a slow burn. It's forged in the everyday moments, in the habits, in the silence, in the choices no one applauds, but you make anyway. Because you know what you're building, that's what makes belief sustainable. It's not emotionally dependent. It's not reactive. It's rooted in discipline. Discipline to keep choosing, to keep believing, to keep repeating the behaviors that align with who you want to become. And over time, those choices begin to feel less like effort and more like identity. They become part of your rhythm, part of your DNA. And here's the beauty of it. The more you practice belief, the more it spreads, not just within you, but to the people around you. They see your consistency. They see your integrity. They see your quiet commitment to something bigger than yourself. And whether they say it out loud or not, they start to believe a little more too. Your repetition becomes an invitation for others to do the same. Leadership isn't about being loud. It's about being consistent. It's about modeling belief, not just talking about it. The most inspiring people aren't always the ones with the best speeches. They're the ones who show up every day with purpose. The ones who live what they say, the ones who do the work, even when no one's watching. That's the type of belief that changes cultures, that changes families, that changes futures. Not the flashy kind, but the steady kind. The type you build with your actions, the kind you choose every morning. That's the kind of belief that lasts. And the truth is, the process never really ends. Never reach a point where you stop needing to practice belief as your vision grows. So do the demands on your belief. Each new level of growth requires a new level of conviction, a new level of trust, a new level of consistency. So the question isn't whether belief is possible, it's whether you're willing to build it day by day, step by step, rep by rep. Are you willing to repeat the vision until it becomes your reality? Are you willing to speak the word